denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Tonight, we'll hear part 1 of a delicious 2-part Halloween story brought to us by A.G. Hilton. Our scene opens on Halloween afternoon as a working girl, Morgan, is hurrying away from her employer, Conrad. As it turns out, some product has gone missing, and he believes she is the culprit. But the seller is the enigmatic Ma Hoyt, who took up residence in the cursed Walker house some years prior. Now, as Conrad, Morgan, and their muscle Wes drive toward the old Walker house to set things right on Halloween night, the shadows seem to have a life of their own, and old secrets begin to claw their way up into the waning daylight. This story is called Witch House and was written by A.G. Hilton. Part 1. Tricks. An autumn wind whipped, pulling with it rasping leaves and discarded trash that scraped across the parking lot of the decayed motel. Morgan swept along with the detritus, head down, as she made for her room. A part of her, small and beaten deep down over time, despised thinking of the space in those terms. A cell is what it was, what it had been for longer than she would care to remember. But right now, all she wanted was to lie down in the bed and see if there was still whiskey in the bottle she had secreted away. She hurt all over. Peter had caught her earlier, high out of his mind, and he'd been less than gentle. She despised the bastard and his brother. Upon a time, she had daydreamed endlessly about the myriad ways the two might be undone. But the year's abuse had ground the sharp points of the fantasy, much like everything else, into blunted instruments. They were no good anymore, and the resignation to her position crept upon her over unnumbered days with the slow determination of creeping kudzu. In time, it had enwrapped her so thoroughly that when the chance to be head girl came, she took it and barely thought of how this new compliance only deepened the pit she was in. After all, at least it meant being handled by less hands. "Hey baby, wait up!" She knew the voice. Peter's brother, the king bastard, Conrad. She didn't want to stop, but her feet faltered treacherously at the call. "Do not look, do not acknowledge. Just get inside and hope he loses interest." "Hey, I said slow down!" 20 more feet to the door. 15. 10. "Hey, bitch!" A vice grip seized on her arm and spun her around. Conrad White stared with knitted brow. A solidly built bald man with a brown beard, he was the contrast to his lean junkie of a brother, and she'd always assumed the more dangerous. "You deaf or something? I said wait up!" "Sorry." She fought the old urge to lower her gaze and held Conrad's eye with her own. "I must have been in my own world, didn't hear with all the wind. But you've got my attention now, Shug." She rubbed a hand on the man's chest. An agitated Conrad was generally bad news, but she'd learned how to redirect him over time. He brushed her hand away. "Where you been, anyway?" The words, "ask your brother," jumped to her lips, but died just as quickly. As far as Conrad was concerned, the sun shined out his little brother's ass. "Checking on things, the girls, you know," she said aloud. "Uh-huh. Why don't you give me that little purse for a minute?" Morgan looked at the little handbag she carried around. It was a garish thing, bright pink, and had seen better days. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She didn't know what Conrad wanted with it, but the thought of it being taken suddenly made her feel like that little girl she'd been once upon a time before things had taken their turn. So she drew back and kept up the playful tone. "What you need a purse for?"
"Trick-or-treating. It's Halloween, ain't it? Now give it."
Conrad snatched it away and turned his back to her. Immediately, lipstick, a pack of gum, and all manner of odd bits fell to the concrete. He crouched amid the pile, sifting through the items. Morgan started forward, intending to collect the fallen things. "What'd you have to do that for?" Conrad warned her off with a threatening hand.
"Don't you mess with none of this. Stand right over there where I can see you."
"What are you looking for?"
"Who knows? I'll know it if I see it. Now shut up."
Morgan didn't like this one bit. Conrad had the same look when he found out a girl palmed a wallet off of John, not realizing he was both a regular and a deputy in town who tended to look the other way. She still remembered the cries and the sounds of blows against flesh that pierced through the thin motel walls. Suddenly, Conrad stopped his searching, and his hand darted out to grab a small baggie amid the clutter. The afternoon autumn light filtered through the plastic, showing a collection of brown powder and odd bits that could have been stems. Morgan could only stare in confusion. Conrad rose to face her.
"Damn it, Morgan."
"Now wait a minute, what is this? What is that?"
"Come on, don't play me like that. Some new chick playing dumb is one thing, but you?
Conrad,
after all we've been through, you want to screw me like this?"
"I don't even know what that is."
"Like hell you don't. How do you have it then?"
He held the bag so close, Morgan had to look down her nose at it.
"This is new. Something premium from a very, very special supplier. A supplier whose product has disappeared before we get it to the streets. Pete's sure it'll be the next big thing, and we need this plug. And here you are taking the stuff before we can turn it around."
"I don't know what to tell you. It ain't mine." Conrad's hand snapped forward like a viper, pinning her by the throat against the brick of the motel wall.
"Do you know how much shit we've been in since the cops busted Snyder's lab? We're short on cash, and I got people asking after money. Pete was sure this would give us the boost we need. It was free goddamn money. They gave us the first batch free. Now we got a meeting with the big wig, and they're expecting us to buy more with the fucking money this was supposed to turn over. So who else is in on it, huh? You got the other bitches nabbing some here and there? Just can't believe it. You know I trusted you, but Pete was right."
"Peter?" she croaked. "Did Peter say something?"
"Always said you were no good, but you got me thinking with the wrong head."
"Peter's a goddamn junkie, Conrad. How do you know he's not the one skimming? You know, I just saw him before you showed up, high as a kite. Maybe he put—" Conrad slapped her hard enough to send her to the ground. She braced for more, but instead went cold as she heard a metallic click. She knew if she looked up, she'd be looking down the barrel of the flashy pearl-handled revolver that Conrad wore like he were some gutter trash John Wayne. Now there was nothing except to await a final deafening boom. But none came.
"Not another word from you about my brother," he said. "In fact, not another word from you at all. We got ourselves a little trip to make to set things right." "Peter, get up."
Conrad gave his brother a slap on the shoulder and watched him slowly uncurl upon the ratty couch. Having left Morgan in the hands of his muscle, Wes, he had gone looking for his brother, only to find him near catatonic in the dingy back office of the motel which served as their headquarters. Peter sat up, red-eyed and fly undone. The sight had become more and more common of late, and the bitch's words, junkie, flitted through his mind. He forced them away.
"You don't look so good," he said. "Be straight. You take something, Pete?"
Just a little something."
he slurred.
Trying to sleep. You know I don't sleep good.
As always, Conrad sent his mind back to the neglectful foster homes, and later to the cold nights under bridges and in abandoned husks. It wasn't Peter's fault. Those places had given his brother his small afflictions. Pete just didn't have the same mettle. That's why he needed looking out for.
I know,
Conrad replied after a moment.
But I need you sharp. We got some trouble.
Peter sat a little straighter.
Trouble?
Yeah. Remember how I told you some of that new product was going missing?
Find out who it was?
Fucking Morgan. Found some on her. Peter sank back into the couch.
Bro, I told you, she's tricky. Told you, you can't trust her.
I know. Look, now we're in some hot water. We got that meeting with the new supplier tonight, and we don't have the cash we need. I gotta try to smooth it over. You gotta hold the fort down while I'm out. You know how people get on Halloween, expecting some freaky Johns.
No problem,
said Peter. He tried to stand, seemed to think better of it, and propped his feet on the scratched coffee table instead.
I got it all under control.
Conrad stifled an exasperated sigh. You know what? Just lay low. Clayton and the others can look after things. I'll send Clarissa or one of the other girls down to check in on you. Peter tried to take his feet again.
No, don't worry. I'm good for it, man.
When he stumbled, Conrad caught him and made him lay back down on the couch before throwing a ratty blanket over him. Each day it grew more difficult not to acknowledge that Peter's problems were getting out of hand. But whatever insinuations the bitch might have made, in that moment all Conrad saw now was his kid brother being tucked in. And he wouldn't let anything happen to his kid brother. The old truck coughed, sputtered, seemed about to give up the ghost before roaring to life. Morgan sat rigid between Wes and Conrad as the former drove them toward the hills outside of town on Conrad's orders. They had not restrained her, and for that she was grateful, but Conrad had his garish revolver resting on his knee, and that was deterrent enough. They went on like that, in silence. Morgan kept her eyes forward, noting the Halloween decorations, classic witches and ghosts swinging in the wind as they passed through a residential area at the town limits. The sun waned in the sky, and already kids began to gather for trick-or-treating. She wished she could borrow some of their carefree happiness, but soon these sights gave way to thicker trees and fewer houses as they pushed toward the town's borders. "What are you going to do to me?" she finally asked. Conrad kept his eyes ahead.
Me? I ain't gonna do nothing. Not up to me.
What do you mean?
I told you, that stuff you've been swiping is something special and comes from a special source. One I don't want to piss off when we come up short. So now I gotta try to make a peace offering. She'll decide what becomes of you.
She?
They call her Ma Hoyt.
A beat of silence passed among them. The implacable Wes seemed to sit up a little straighter.
She's a weird bird to hear tell of it,
Conrad went on.
Reckon it don't mean nothing to you, seeing how you ain't from around these parts. I wouldn't have known the name either, but people around here tell stories about her. Wild shit, if you listen to it. They say she's some kind of hill witch, lives up in this old place just outside the county line. But it's just a bunch of talk. Turns out whoever lives up there just peddles some psychedelic hippie shit. You never said that was the supplier,
Wes put in. Uncomfortably, Morgan noted a tension settling into the large man.
You saying you've actually met her?
Well, no, I mean, not directly. Word is she don't ever come down from the hills, but I managed to get a meeting with someone who works with her. Wes seemed to relax a little.
Okay, so we're gonna meet this contact. Not this time. This time we're going straight to the top. Gotta make things right.
Morgan felt the truck slow to a stop as Wes applied the brakes.
You saying we're about to roll up at the old Walker house? Wes asked. We can't do that, man. Are you shitting me right now? What's gotten into you? Wait. Conrad started to laugh. Wait a second. Don't tell me Big Bad Wes is scared of some kid stories.
Wes's lips pressed to a thin line, and he shook his head. He pointed to Morgan.
Look, you want to talk about her not being from around here? You and your brother didn't grow up here neither. You don't know. It ain't just kid stories, at least not all of it. Now, I ain't saying I believe there's some witch living up there, but them woods are no good. Tons of people gone missing up there. Kids, a lot of them. Hell, I've even told you about my brother who went missing when we were younger. He used to want to go poking around up there, too. It's a bad place. If that's where we're headed, I want out.
Any humor left Conrad's face.
I ain't believing this. You're telling me you won't blink twice if I tell you to mash a guy's head in when he owes us. But you won't drive to a meeting? I'm just saying.
Click. Conrad thumbed back the revolver's hammer casually.
And I'm just saying, put this rig back in drive and go where I tell you. Do I need to spell out how fucking important this is?
Morgan's breath caught in her throat. She kept her eyes fixed ahead, afraid that even looking in the direction of the gun might set it off. Wes sat for a moment, glanced toward Conrad, then back toward the road.
You're a real son of a bitch.
And then they were back on track, the silence between them heavier than before, as a bloated moon peeked from the wooded horizon.
Take this next right.
Wes did as he was told, and they found themselves on a narrow dirt path. By now, darkness had blanketed the land. On each side of the road, the looming trees took on the aspect of strange sentinels watching their progress. Ground fog collected in hollow places off the road and reached into the path of the headlights like the fingers of conjured spirits. Morgan wasn't one to be fazed by ghost stories. She'd seen too much real horror to give such ideas credence. But coupled with the things which had been said earlier, the atmosphere had her watching for movement from the shadows. After a time, a rusted gate, chained closed with a heavy padlock, emerged from the darkness before them. Wes brought the truck to a stop before it and looked to Conrad.
All right, now what? Don't reckon you got a key?
No, but we should be expected. Keep the engine running. With that, he got out and walked ahead into the headlight beams. Did you mean that? Morgan asked when Conrad was out of earshot.
Mean what?
All that stuff about this being some kind of bad place? About having a kid brother go missing up here?
Why you care? You're the reason we're in this mess.
Wes, I don't know what Conrad told you, but I swear, I don't know how that stuff got in my bag. Someone put it there.
You know it don't matter, right?
What doesn't?
Whatever you have to say? Conrad told me what you told him, that Peter could have put it in there. Wrong answer. Not saying I don't believe you, but when dealing with those two, well, the truth don't always come into things.
Morgan began to protest further, but the words died away as she looked to the extreme limit of the headlight beams. Someone was coming. The figure came straight toward Conrad from the other side of the gate, but as he came on, Morgan felt a crawling in her belly that told her she ought to get out and run back down the dirt path. But the pressing darkness beyond the truck's cab kept her in place. The figure gained clarity as it came. It was a man dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans, the hood drawn in around his face. His face showed pale as a fish belly in the gleam of headlights, and his eyes could have been a fish's as well, so blank and dull they stared into the high beams without a blink. Even Conrad seemed to give ground as the man came forward, and Morgan saw him rest a hand on the pistol at his side. Words were exchanged, and the strange man turned his dead eyes from Conrad to the truck and back. Every time that blank gaze drifted to the truck, Morgan fought an urge to cringe behind the dashboard. Finally, Conrad turned back as the man produced a key and opened the gate. This task complete, he faded back into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared.
"What's up with that guy?"
asked Wes as Conrad climbed into the vehicle.
"Just drive,"
came the reply. As the truck trundled forward, Morgan sensed the man lurking off to their left, and she imagined that if she were to look to the side, he would be right there at the window, watching with those empty, fish-like eyes. With discomfort, she realized that her fears over being turned over to a worse situation or killed and left to rot in a backwoods ditch were softening and giving way to something more. Between the weird gatekeeper and Wes's reluctance to go wherever they were headed, all sorts of odd ideas began struggling to the surface. More than likely, the thoughts were just a byproduct of that original fear, a distraction from what was inevitable. And yet, as the trees gave way to a clearing and a house on a hill, they seemed more tangible than ever. Wes did not consider himself an imaginative man. Over the years, any sense of wonder or awe about the mysteries of life had been carefully sanded away by the cold, hard instruments of experience, and he had done his part to aid in this leveling. After all, it didn't pay to have your head in the clouds, or to leave room for dwelling on this or that person who had to be done away with. He did not aspire to coldness, but simply a safe and detached outlook concerned only with the hard facts. How much product had been moved, how many bodies passed through the hotel, and how many rounds were in his piece at a given time. Yet tonight, it seemed there was one mental corner which had eluded his attempts at cleansing, and that corner of his mind set ablaze as he saw the Walker House loom above them. The building crouched atop the hill like some waiting beast. A jagged profile born of high-peaked roofs and many jutting chimneys provided a spiny, forbidding appearance, while the soft light glowing in the windows might have been luminous eyes peering down. The whole thing ought to have been kitsch, a parodic distillation of the quintessential spook house, all dressed up for Halloween night. Yet seeing it brought Wes's mind back to whispered stories on street corners and schoolyards. And above everything, it brought to him a name he had for years kept at arm's length: Marty. Before tonight, Wes might have said that his brother's disappearance when they were young was just one of those things, a spot of bad luck, a senseless act of cruelty. Yet ever since laying eyes on the Walker House, his mind crowded with those childhood whispers. And there had been many strange whispers about this place. People said that way back around the time of the Second World War, long before the elusive Ma Hoyt had taken residence, the original owner and designer of the house, Robert Walker, had himself been arrested over a string of murders and disappearances. Story went that Walker had come into considerable money due to various profitable ventures, strangest among them investments in old toy and game sales. Supposedly, the place was built to fulfill the insane Walker's wild obsessions with death and play, and was filled with bodies in hidden places. After Walker was taken, the place had sat abandoned and would likely have been destroyed after what was found there. However, it seemed the arrival of Ma Hoyt had stopped things. It was all ridiculous, nothing more than childish embellishments to round the edges of brutal realities. Stories encouraged by parents to keep children from wandering, as were always told since time immemorial. And yet, here stood the house. Not story, but stone and brick and wood. Firm reality. And someone certainly still lived here. That was enough to make Wes want to wrench the steering wheel around and hightail it back down the dirt road. Suddenly, he wasn't in the truck at all, but rather on his bike. Its front wheel crunched over fallen leaves as he weaved up to the rusted old gate. Another bike leaned abandoned against the gate, while a figure clambered over. He shouted at the figure, told it to stop, but it didn't heed him. He shouted through the gate again and again until his voice went hoarse and the sun grew weak. He waited an eternity for the figure to come back, until the reaching shadows chased him toward town and its lights. Conrad's voice almost startled him. "Earth to Wes, you gonna drive us up or what?" He looked to the house, back to Conrad and his gun, then let out a long breath. God damn it, he was acting like a kid. He eased onto the gas, and they began the climb toward the house. All the while, he told himself this was nothing but business, and the sooner it was over with, the better. As the truck came to a stop before the large house, Conrad found that he had to steel himself to exit the cab. It began to dawn on him that maybe he had misunderstood something about the particulars of this operation. When the man who called himself Silas had approached Peter with a new product sample, and his brother had raved about how it was going to make them rich, Conrad had seen only the dollar signs. The name Ma Hoyt had meant little to him. Of course he'd heard stories. Anyone who stayed in the area long enough was bound to pick them up, but why would he ever put stock in kids' tales? Mostly he suspected that the whole thing was a purposely cultivated rumor, a smokescreen to allow the resident of this property a degree of privacy. He still clung to that idea. After all, whoever lived here was growing that freaky fungi and evidently looking to start selling. And with the way Wes and others treated the place, it seemed like you couldn't get a better means of keeping locals out of your way. But ever since dealing with that freak at the gate, he'd found himself trying to remember just what exactly the stories said about this place and its inhabitant. Not that he was putting stock in those now, not at all. It was just that he kept thinking of that guy at the gate. That dude. Well, something had been up with that dude. Probably stoned out of his mind. Seems sloppy to have a guard with his head up in the clouds while on duty, but that had to be it. Conrad didn't know what the guy might have been on, but whatever it was, it had him out there like a zombie. Finally, he stepped from the truck, but as if called by his nervous thoughts, shadows shambled on the porch, and he felt more of those spaced-out eyes on him. He'd give these folks this much. They really committed to the whole eerie bit. He took Morgan by the arm and pulled her along behind him. "Come on," he said to Wes. "Let's get this over with." For a moment, it seemed the big man might protest again. God damn it, he was acting like a child. But he too exited the vehicle. They stood like that for a moment, all three within the moonlight before the house. Conrad tightened his grip on Morgan's arm. "Okay, now I need you to be cool. We're just going in for a little chat to straighten things out. Who knows? Play it right and you might not end up as witch food." Morgan's arm buzzed with a deepening numbness as Conrad kept it in a vice grip. But this was a distant sensation. He said something to her, but she barely heard him. All she could do was stare at the strange house. Whoever had built the thing must have had a twisted sense of whimsy, for as looming and monstrous as it had seemed on the drive up, she now felt the flickering orange glow in the windows gave it the appearance of a giant Halloween decoration. It seemed that whatever crew used this place had a matching sensibility too. After all, the lurking shadows on the porch might have caught her eye, but so did a small jack-o'-lantern staring back at her from the steps, and what might have been a black cat racing from view. If it weren't for the gun to her back, she might have felt the perfect image of trick-or-treater gaping up at the neighborhood spook house.
"What now?"
asked Wes. She felt Conrad shift as he scanned around. The silent forms on the porch had made no move since they had exited the truck. She could feel their eyes watching from just beyond the shafts of moonglow, and sensed even Conrad's hesitance to proceed. But before he could muster a response, the front door opened. An orange glow streamed from the door and traced the shape of a silhouette, which emerged and descended to meet them. "Well now, speak of the devil. I said it was about time you'd show up, and here you are." The speaker stopped before them, a slight man whose thoroughly shaved head gleamed in the moonlight. He gave a smile that might have been pleasant were it not stretched as it was over the man's hollow face.
"Silas," Conrad said with a nod. "Look, I was actually hoping to talk to you."
Silas stopped him with a raised hand.
"No need to rush, friend. Come inside first. The mistress will have my head for making you wait out of doors any longer. After all, that is who you are here to see. Save the business talk for her."
The man turned back toward the step, and Morgan was surprised to feel the pressure on her arm release as Conrad pushed her toward Wes and made a quick step after Silas.
"Hang on a second,"
he said, and put a hand out to stop the man's retreat. If he had intended on saying more, he never got the chance. Silas froze at the light touch, looking at the hand on his shoulder as if it were a loathsome spider that had dropped there. At the same time, a hush fell over the tableau. The shifting figures on the porch seemed to wait upon the moment with bated breath.
"Kindly unhand me, friend,"
Silas said. He no longer smiled.
"Now I tried to impress upon both you and that brother of yours that we operate according to certain standards, that certain etiquettes are to be observed, did I not? The mistress is particular. You will come along and await her within. You will wait to discuss the night's business with her at the appointed time."
Morgan watched Conrad, watched the garish gun he had neglected to return to its holster before approaching the strange man. He was being sloppy, and if it was first impressions he was worried about, his behavior did him no favors. Not that Conrad had ever proven to be master of tact or eloquence, but tonight he seemed cagey and unpredictable. He'd threatened to shoot Wes if he didn't keep driving, for God's sake. He could act as macho as he wanted, but she knew he must be unnerved by the strangeness of this place and its people. In the end, Conrad backed off, hands up in a pacifying gesture as he put his gun into its holster.
"Sorry, didn't mean anything by it. It's cool, everything's cool."
He turned back to Wes.
"Everything's cool, right?"
"Sure, man," said Wes, but the words came as an afterthought, his eyes never leaving the figures on the porch. The ghoulish smile returned to Silas's face.
"Splendid! Come along."
As Conrad started after the man, Wes pushed her along before him toward the porch steps.
"You don't have to do this, you know," she muttered. "I know you don't want to be here either. This is Conrad's mess. You, me, A quick hop in the truck and we can blow out through that gate."
"Shut up and keep walking," came the stiff reply.
"Now then,"
said Silas as he mounted the steps.
"Speaking of that brother of yours, where is he? You, I know, and I recognize the big one, but the morsel you've brought is new. I would have thought Peter would want to be here to seal the deal, as it were."
"He's not feeling good lately, otherwise he would have been here."
"Ah, a shame. But no matter. They say 3 is company. Right this way, please."
By now they had reached the porch, and its roof cut off the last vestiges of moonlight. In the darkness, she could see the watchers. They stood off to the left and right of the door, groups of 6 each. They were men, all clad in dark clothes, most with hoods pulled over their heads, like the one at the gate. Morgan wondered if they might share his strange look as well, but their hoods shielded their eyes. Still, their heads turned to mark their passage, and the simultaneous motion made her quicken her step toward the door. Then she jerked to a stop. Wes had grown still as a statue, his hand suddenly gripping her shoulder, a hand that began to tremble. Looking back, she saw him staring at the hooded group on the right side of the porch. The color drained from him, and his mouth worked silently over unformed words. One of the figures lurched forward, arms outstretched, fingers grasping. The sudden motion brought a scream to her throat, but before she could set it loose, a bulky shadow interposed itself between them. A thump of fist on flesh resounded.
"What is the meaning of this?"
Silas reemerged from the open door to glower over the scene. One of the hooded men now cowered on the ground before a hulking man. His monstrous shoulders heaved as he wrung out his massive right hand, no doubt shaking off the knuckle ache of what must have been a devastating blow. He wore a jacket patterned with hunter's camouflage, and when he turned in her direction, Morgan saw his face was obscured with a loose-fitting mask of red cloth. The Goliath of a man grunted something at Silas. If they were words, Morgan couldn't catch them. Nevertheless, Silas raised an eyebrow.
"Recursive, you say? Take him aside. I shall have a look later."
"Hey, wait a second!" Wes stepped forward, but the large man turned toward him. "Just a fucking second, man. What just happened? Him, back there. How did—"
"I apologize profusely, sir," Silas cut in. "Our men are well healed. I do not know—"
Wes tried to push forward.
"No, wait! I need to talk to him!"
But the large man held his ground, and the hooded man's compatriots soon retreated inside with him in tow.
"Please, calm yourself, sir," said Silas. "I apologize if he disturbed you. I assure you the situation will be dealt with."
"You good?" asked Conrad as he stepped outside. Wes stood for a moment, saying nothing. Conrad came close and spoke low.
"What was that?"
"I don't fucking know, man. Thought I saw something." "Never mind. This place is off. Making me jumpy, maybe."
"Just keep it together."
While the two discussed, Morgan glanced toward the open door to the Walker house and then back to the porch steps. If she were quick, maybe she could make it down them without rolling an ankle and vanish into the woods. But she felt eyes on her and found the large man's head turned her direction. Though the cloth covering his face hid any expression, still she sensed a grin aimed at her. A grin which said, "I see you." A grin which begged her to try something. "Please," said Silas, motioning toward the soft glow of the open door. "Step right this way." A fire crackled away and sent both warm and flickering light about the room. It was one of many throughout the monstrous old house, and though the building had been equipped with electric lighting, their hosts seemed content to let the many fires serve as the primary light source. The effect was a cozy warmth, nearly homey. Furthermore, a black cat had emerged from beneath the leather sofa upon which she sat and made itself a ball in her lap. Between the fire's warmth and the cat's soft purring, she could almost forget her circumstances. But then the fire flicker would reveal the hooded men and the giant lurking in the adjoining room, and her heart would pick up its pace. The whole situation continued to devolve into strangeness. Besides the silent guards and the masked enforcer who watched them, the house itself gave her a sense of unease, which the inviting atmosphere just managed to keep suppressed. She thought she heard sounds as of things moving within the walls. Maybe the place was infested with rats. The house's corridors also seemed to stretch on and on in a way that didn't feel possible. Even though the place was large, it seemed there was no way it had the square footage to encompass the winding route traveled to reach this room. Even if she'd been given the opportunity to run, Morgan didn't think she could navigate the way out. Without any prospects, she sat listening to the creaks of the house and the subdued discussion of Conrad and Wes from across the room. For despite Silas's insistence on getting them inside, he had led them through the labyrinthine place only to leave them in this parlor.
"The mistress," he'd said, "is finishing up with an unexpected visitor, but will be along shortly."
The mistress. The title kept circulating in her mind. What sort of person would live in such a place and run, well, whatever kind of operation this was? It seemed the answer would arrive soon. As she sat contemplating her fate, Morgan caught fragments of conversation through the oak doors near the couch upon which she sat. Presently, the muffled voices within grew more distinct, as if the speakers drew nearer to the door. First, a female voice, husky and low. "Admit I was shocked to hear about Joseph, especially after everything else. One of our own fell this summer, if you can believe it. Though in the case of your master, I'm not surprised to find the news was less than advertised."
"He gives his words that such a disruption won't happen again. The young one will be brought to heel. He intends to continue relations as before."
"Well, maybe next time he can come himself instead of this."
"He is with me always. My words are his."
"But of course." The oak doors swung open, and a stern-faced man emerged. The cat startled from Morgan's lap as he gave her a glance and exited the room. "Silas," came the female voice from within. "Escort Mr. Tate back to his vehicle. Rest of y'all come on in and let me have a look at you." Wes and Conrad turned toward her, but Morgan walked ahead of them of her own volition. If there was no running, she'd at least keep her dignity. Besides, she was damned curious to see the speaker. As with the room prior, the adjoining space gleamed with the soft glow of flames. In addition to another small fireplace, fat candles dripped with wax upon the hearth. And amid the dancing light, Morgan finally laid eyes upon the mistress of the strange house. What she had expected was not entirely clear, but the talk from Wes and the house's atmosphere had inadvertently put the image into her mind of some old, wart-covered hag that would be right at home with the Halloween decorations in the town below. Instead, Morgan was greeted by a red-haired woman who leaned against a large wooden desk at the end of the room. Far from the mental image she'd conjured, the woman had smooth, creamy skin, and looked far younger than Morgan would have ever imagined. About her shoulders, she wore some kind of furs over a silken black dress that dipped suggestively in the front. And as Morgan came on, the woman too came forward, her step smooth with a litheness nearly feline in nature. What's more, the woman beamed at her as if greeting a seldom seen but much loved friend. "Welcome to my home." Her voice was low and sweet, tinged with a southern drawl. "Everyone calls me Ma Hoyt. You can call me Ma." Morgan began to reply, but Conrad stepped forward.
"Pleasure to meet you. I'm Conrad, and this is my man Wes."
Ignoring Conrad entirely, Ma stepped around them both to advance on Wes. Morgan had seen the big man brawl with multiple men at once, but he seemed to fight an urge to shrink before the small woman. "Ah, well, looky there," she said, putting a hand lightly on his cheek. "You remind me of someone. Local boy, are you?" Wes remained still as a statue, his only reply a strained exhalation of breath.
"You'll have to forgive him,"
said Conrad, with a pointed look at Wes.
"He don't talk much."
Ma Hoyt kept her eyes on Wes. "Maybe a little tea would loosen that tongue on this chilly Halloween night?" Then, over his shoulder toward the door. "Silas, the tea, please?"
"There's no need for all that," said Conrad. "I'm sure your time is valuable, so we don't mind getting straight to business."
Finally, the woman turned to acknowledge his presence. "I take it you must be the leader of this operation."
"Could say that. Me and my brother."
Silas mentioned something about a brother. I understand he was the one with whom Silas first made contact. He couldn't make it?
Under the weather.
Indeed. Ma Hoyt strolled back to the desk and planted herself in the high-back chair. "Well, since you are so eager to discuss our dealings, let's have at it. If I recall, Silas delivered a small batch of my product, free of charge, for a test run. Show a goodwill with the intention you'd be back to buy a heap of it. I do hope you have some money in those little pockets for the next batch. After all, some say it's unwise to come to a hill witch empty-handed."
"There's been a little complication."
"Go on."
"Well, the product didn't make it to the street."
Ma Hoyt offered no response except the raising of her eyebrows. Normally, at this point in a deal going south, Morgan expected Conrad to become defensive, maybe even belligerent. He'd go on about some excuse or another, and she knew he was a firm believer that what problems couldn't be talked out of could be fought out of. But now he could hardly get a word out. He stood there for an interminable moment, waiting, maybe almost hoping for some response. But still Ma Hoyt merely sat and stared.
"We can fix it," he said at last.
"I should hope so. Maybe you paid double this time to make things whole."
I'd love to. I mean, I will. I don't have the cash for it, but I can get it soon."
"Soon isn't now, though. Like I said, it doesn't pay to show your face here empty-handed."
"I'm not empty-handed."
Finally, Conrad seemed to master himself, stand a little taller. He pointed a finger in Morgan's direction.
"I brought her. She's the one who's been stealing the product. Had some in her little handbag. Now, she's one of my best girls, but she's yours. You do with her whatever you want, and I'll get you your money."
You are a thief, then, child? Asked Ma Hoyt.
I didn't do nothing, Morgan replied automatically. I got set up. Don't you go trying to worm out of this one, said Conrad. I found it on her myself.
Morgan whirled on him. If this was the end of the line, might as well speak her mind.
I don't care what you found. I didn't put it there. Didn't even know you were trying to sell any new shit until tonight. But we all know who else was in on this deal.
Conrad's jaw worked. She watched his fist clench and waited for him to come at her.
Well, now, said Ma Hoyt, I think we all need to take a breath. Have some tea.
Silas appeared at Morgan's side, a tray of steaming mugs in his hands. She hadn't heard him enter, much less approach. Hesitantly, she took a mug, as did both Wes and Conrad. All three stared into the dark liquid within.
It isn't poisoned, if that's what you're thinking, said Ma Hoyt with a chuckle.
She leaned back and sipped from a mug of her own, while Silas took a new post to her left.
Go on now, have some. It's good for the soul. Besides, the boys and I will be mighty displeased if you refuse our hospitality.
Morgan spared a glance to both Wes and Conrad. She knew they had to be thinking the same thing. No way were they going to drink this stuff. Not in a place like this. But Ma Hoyt kept her eyes fixed on the group, all the while sipping from a mug of her own. Then the floor creaked, and Morgan felt the Goliath of a man lurking in the doorway behind them.
Bottoms up, then.
The tea was the perfect temperature and laced with a sweetness. With its warmth running through her, she found she felt a little calmer.
That's better, said Ma Hoyt. Now, let's talk this out.
What's there to talk out? Conrad said. How many times do I have to say that she had the stuff on her?
And yet, she says she didn't put it there. See, I simply cannot abide liars, especially when it comes to potential business prospects.
Morgan could practically hear Conrad grinding his teeth.
What's gonna make you see the truth of things, then?
Ma Hoyt smiled.
What do you know about this old house and the man who built it?
Just the stories people tell, though they mainly tell about you.
Shame that. See, this is a unique house built by a unique mind. Robert Walker might have had his particular interests, but in the end, he was a lover of play, games, chance, fate even, and on a night like tonight, maybe tricks, treats.
I don't follow, said Conrad.
Ma Hoyt looked back to Morgan.
You ever heard of a trial by ordeal, child?
You want to have a trial? The woman laughed.
Not like you're thinking. See, way back when, folk would be accused of something. Witchcraft, say. And they might have to do a little test. Idea was that if you came through unscathed, you were innocent. Otherwise, well, let's say it never ended pretty.
Morgan felt a flutter of fear try to well up in her gut, but it was off-kilter, smothered by something. A strange numbness had set into her lips, a tingling flitted at her fingers, and her eyes dropped to the steaming mug in her hand as Ma Hoyt rose and began to walk around her desk.
I say we honor the memory of old Mr. Walker by having us a little trial game of our own this Halloween.
Morgan's momentary calm began to slip. Something was wrong with her. She went to match the strange woman's advance with retreat, but her feet stayed still. She tried to look to Wes and Conrad. Had they drank the tea as well? But she found that now her eyes could not stray from those of their host.
"What are you gonna do to me?"
she whispered. The woman came on, crossing the space between them. "Nothing, child. It ain't up to me. You are the accused, so it's up to you." Gently, Ma Hoyt took the mug and set it aside. She clasped Morgan's hand in her own, the touch allowing her just a moment to glance down. For the first time, she saw a tattoo on the woman's hand, a series of interlocking circles and something like a serpent's head. It seemed to writhe on her skin. "May the mother be with you, child. If you are blameless, let her guide your way."
"Wait a second, please."
Ma Hoyt stepped away, leaving her in the center of the room. "Silas?" Morgan had a moment to register the man reaching just beneath the desk before the world dropped away to darkness.
Down, down she goes. What awaits in the pit? Nobody knows. It looks like all of our dominoes are set up, and the first ones are beginning to fall. Just what sort of fungus do you think Ma Hoyt is peddling? And who was it on the porch that startled Wes so? I suspect I know, but no, couldn't be. And wasn't Ma Hoyt talking to a Mr. Tate? I could swear that name is familiar. If you're enjoying this story, please make sure to tune in next week to hear our shocking conclusion. Please also leave a like on this video and subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel so you can hear more stories like this one. Whatever you do, give a bit of credence to children's stories about the old spook house. And don't fall asleep.